We are here at a standing point that we do have one male who is very supportive of all of our female speakers. And we are going to introduce him as Jagdeep Singh. He is the Executive Director with JPM. He has been executing and innovating in commerce and payment area for the last 18 years. He's been focused on commerce and emerging technologies, leveraging his core strength around payments, innovation, and payment systems to be a strategic partner in development in Silicon Valley. His subject matter is how can men help achieve gender equality for all. Let's give it a welcome to Jagdeep.
Now I know what it feels like to be a token. Thank you. I'll try and live up to the expectations and be the token guy. I'm going to start talking from the very beginning about the first woman who ran the Boston Marathon, Catherine Switzer. So when she first registered for the marathon in 1967, she registered as KB Switzer. So she didn't want them to know she was a woman from the name. She started running the marathon. She was from Syracuse University. She's doing fine. Tom Miller, her boyfriend's with her, and her coach. They get to a point where the media truck pulls up, and the photographers notice because she has bob cut, she's got small hair, and she's running, and they're like, girl, there's a girl. So one of the race director comes off the truck, runs after her, and starts pulling her number off of her shirt and tells her to get off. It's not her race. And this is happening, and Tom Miller, her boyfriend, is an All-American football player, comes around and gives him a good shove and gets him out of the way. And the coach tells her to run like hell, and she starts running. The story is that most of the time, you don't need men to do anything more than to push that institutional thinking out of the way. And once you have gone beyond that, all you gotta do is succeed. Because if at that point, had Catherine not finished that race, women can't run would be the paradigm that gets set. So you need to complete the whale. All men can do is come in and give you that extra shove to that institutional thinking, that religious belief that's stopping you from getting up there. So I think that's a good way to start. Let me ask you, how many of you know that the US women's team just sued the soccer organization for not getting the same salary, right?
Yeah.
How many of you have gone and watched a US women's soccer match?
They're really good.
Name 3 players for me.
I don't know, but they're really good.
That's the problem. We don't, if I ask you how many of you have been to a Warriors game, you could probably name the whole team off. But if you don't go to the women's game, game is nothing but it's a sports business, right? If we don't make money off of that business, we're not going to pay the women the same amount. So for us to do it, it needs to start with us. So I'm in finance. And I'll give you some numbers in where JPM is. In 2013, women surpassed men in terms of education. 21% more women obtained an undergraduate degree than men did. And even though women now hold 52% of management professional related positions in the US, the pay gap is still huge, right? So the question is, if women are more educated and they're accomplished and they're in management, 52% of them are in management, then it goes back to the earlier discussion, well, why are women their own enemies? Why aren't they paying each other equally? Do you really need men to come in and now push that thinking aside, or is it a thing that you can do internally? So the other aspect of this, which is sort of my struggle at home, is my wife doesn't want to do anything with finances. So how many of you women have a living trust at home? Or how many of you know where all your finances are?
No, I don't.
Right? So, interestingly, women control 60% of wealth in the United States. 60% of the high net worth women earn their own wealth. And out of that, women control 80% of consumer spending. So if you go back to that women's soccer league, if 80% of women are controlling the spending, then the marketer should be all over that women's soccer team to try and get the ads out there to get the women to spend the money with those brands. are we really doing what we say we're doing, or are we just getting around and talking about it, but our actions are not following up on what we say we're doing? So I think we need to sort of follow through on a lot of this, and I don't know where my timing is, so I'm just going to give you one last thing at the end, and it's the conversation that Kartikeya and Ganesh had. So they had, if you're not familiar, Ganesh and Kartikeya are two Hindu gods. Ganesh is the god with the elephant head, and his brother Kartikeya. And they had a challenge that they were going to race around the world 3 times. So Kartikeya had a peacock as his right. He got on his peacock, and he went around the world 3 times. Ganesh stood there, went around his parents 3 times, and said, I won. So the Kartikeya goes, how is that? I went around the world. He goes, well, you were around the world. I went around my world.
Wow. Wow.
So the difference is the subjective and the objective, right? So if we want to actually make a difference, it starts at home. So go home, set up and establish a trust, set up a will, make sure your kid has, if they're a boy and a girl, both have 50% partnership in what's left after it. Your daughter is not a paraya dhan. She's your own daughter, and she's going to get half of your money at the end of it. Not just your son. So once we start following through on what we believe, I think if we change our own world, then the larger objective world will change as well. Thank you.